Imagine this. A child born on Mars, taking their first steps, but in just, 38% of Earth's gravity? Their whole life, everything they know, happens under this thin, kind of pinkish sky. Now, here's the real mind bender for you. Can that child, the first true Martian, can they ever actually visit Earth?
That right there is probably the ultimate test of us becoming a multi-planetary species. And the core challenge, it's not really about the rocket ride back, is it? It's more fundamental. It's about the physics of their brain development. Can their whole spatial system, everything, handle coming back to full Earth gravity? It's this huge physiological paradox we've never faced. It basically determines if they're Martians forever.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into the weeds, looking at the technical timelines, the science, the reality of becoming multiplanetary. Our mission really is to break down the sources, the detailed plans that are defining humanity's push for permanent Mars migration by 2060. That's a target SpaceX, China, NASA, they're all gunning for it.
Yeah, and by the end of this, you'll have a really clear picture of the three massive hurdles that, well, they have to be solved now. First, there's engineering total self-sufficiency. You can't keep relying on Earth. Second, the tech needed to, turn that frozen desert into somewhere warmer, livable. And finally, the huge biological and, frankly, psychological challenge of creating a multi-generational human society completely cut off from Earth.
Oh, and we definitely have that specific kind of surprising detail about a particle-like glitter, basically, that could warm up the whole planet by over 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. Let's unpack that. Because before we even dream about cities on Mars, we got to face the day-to-day chaos.
Yeah.
Just living in that kind of isolation. It's not just being homesick, right? It's being utterly, completely cut off.
Yeah.
And we actually had some pretty stark data on this from the Mars 500 experiment. 6 people locked up for over a year. And the results were pretty telling. 520 days. They saw depression, serious interpersonal conflicts. But maybe the most critical finding, 4 of the 6 crew members, their bodies just shifted. They started running on a 25-hour sleep cycle, spontaneously.
A 25-hour cycle. Wow, just think about that. If you can't even sync your sleep schedules, your wake times are just constantly drifting apart from each other. It's like having permanent, awful jet lag.
Right.
But it's worse, right? It becomes an actual threat. If one person's off cycle, could that mess up operating life support?
It absolutely could.
Yeah.
And that's where the isolation feels. Well, existential. You've got communication delays of 24 minutes each way. So no real-time help, no quick advice, definitely no immediate psychological support. And forget about a rescue mission. If things fall apart internally, the whole mission just fails.
Right. So if that internal cohesion, that teamwork is maybe the only real life support they have, how fast does that lead to needing absolute independence, technologically, economically? Which brings us, I guess, straight to our first big insight. Engineering independence. And the cornerstone for that has got to be in situ resource utilization, ISRU.
ISRU isn't just nice to have. It has to be the foundation. The physics of resupply from Earth, they're just brutal. The sources we looked at show it takes somewhere between 7.5 and 13.1 kilograms of propellant just to land 1 single kilogram of anything on Mars. You can't sustain a colony like that. It's completely inefficient.
Okay, so the idea is turn Mars itself into a factory, basically. Use what's there. That sounds good, but Mars gets way less sunlight than Earth. How efficient can they really be, converting CO2 with limited power?
Well, it's the only real option they have. So efficiency has to be pushed to the max. Mars' atmosphere, it's about 95% CO2. That's your starting material, your feedstock. They can crack that CO2 to get breathable oxygen, obviously, but also methane for rocket fuel. And they can even make plastics, polymers, right there from it. Plus, you've got systems in development now, like the carbon dioxide hydrogen recovery system. They call it CHRSI. The goal for CHRSI is recycling pretty much 100% of the water in their closed-loop life support. Once you make your own fuel and recycle all your water, well, then you're not just visiting anymore, are you? You're a resident.
Makes sense. So if engineering solves water and fuel, what about food? That's the next big one. How do you grow food safely when the soil itself is toxic and there's radiation everywhere?
Right, that takes us into bioregenerative closed ecosystems. And the real workhorse here, surprisingly perhaps, is cyanobacteria. Blue-green algae, essentially. These things are amazing. They can actually thrive in Martian soil. And they do something crucial. They neutralize the perchlorates, these toxic salts that make the Martian dirt poisonous to Earth life. While doing that, they also produce the organic matter needed to create a base for, actual agriculture.
Wait, so the cyanobacteria, they handle the toxins and make usable soil. Is it like a 1-2 punch?
Pretty much, yeah. It sets off this kind of beneficial chain reaction in the soil. And then with that prepped soil, you can start growing food crops, probably in vertical farms, mostly, and crucially, inside protective structures. Things like natural lava tubes seem ideal because they offer great shielding from surface radiation.
Okay, so we've covered basic survival: air, water, food, fuel. But how do we get from just surviving on Mars to actually transforming it,
Yeah.
making it more Earth-like on a timescale that matters to us, not geological ages? This must be our second major insight: terraforming breakthroughs.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting, potentially revolutionary for the timeline. For decades, terraforming was this 10,000-year plus dream, right, way off in the future. But now there's research focusing on engineered dust particles. Think of microscopic rods, almost like glitter, actually,
Yeah.
designed to be made right there on Mars using its own iron and aluminum.
An engineered glitter. Okay.
Okay.
And the stats on this, they sound almost too good to be true.
They are pretty staggering. The sources we reviewed confirm this. Releasing this engineered dust into the upper atmosphere at a pretty modest rate, say 30 liters per second, could potentially raise the entire planet's average temperature by more than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like over 5,000 times more efficient than any previous idea for warming Mars using atmospheric changes.
Wow. 50 degrees from just dust. That's an incredible acceleration. But what are the downsides? Is this reversible if something goes wrong?
That's a key part of the design concept, the reversibility, because these particles are specifically engineered for this job and released from the surface. If any unexpected problems pop up, you just stop releasing them, and the effects should start to dissipate over time. But, warming the planet is only half the battle.
Exactly my thought. Even if it gets warmer, Mars doesn't have a global magnetic field like Earth. Doesn't the solar wind just keep blasting away any atmosphere you try to build up, making the warming kind of pointless long term?
It would, yes. Which is why this warming idea really needs to be paired with probably the biggest engineering project ever conceived. NASA has seriously proposed putting an artificial magnetic shield out in space, specifically at the L1 Lagrange point, that stable spot between Mars and the Sun. And simulations suggest this shield could generate a magnetic field strong enough to basically deflect the solar wind, enough to stop that large-scale atmospheric stripping, and critically, within a human time frame, not over millions of years.
Huh. So that combo, the engineered dust for warmth, the giant magnetic shield for protection, that really does shift the idea of Mars settlement from maybe a small, struggling outpost to a viable, multi-generational project. Okay, so let's circle back now to where we started. That really difficult human question about the Martian child. Our third big insight, the ultimate physiological test.
Right. We absolutely have to talk about the physical cost of growing up in just 38% of Earth's gravity. For anyone conceived and born there, that reduced gravity seems likely to profoundly impact fetal development, especially the vestibular system. That's the part of your inner ear and brain that controls your balance, your spatial orientation,
Yeah.
how you know which way is up.
And the problem isn't just fetal development, right? It continues long after birth.
Exactly. Gravity isn't just passive. It's an active force that shapes how our brains develop. And the human brain, it keeps developing complex systems, wiring itself up until we're roughly age 25. So a child growing up on Mars gets a 62% reduction in that fundamental gravitational force for their entire formative period. The potential consequences: we're talking possible changes in gray matter volume, maybe white matter degradation, long-term effects on cognition, memory, motor control. We just don't fully know.
Their whole sense of self, their physical reality, is fundamentally tied to that lower gravity. It's like the overview effect astronauts feel seeing Earth from space, but completely reversed for them. Earth is the alien world.
Absolutely. They are Martians in a very real physical sense. Earth would just be that little blue dot in their sky. It would inevitably create a distinct Martian culture, a separate identity. And yeah, the question of whether they could ever adapt to Earth's full gravity later in life. Neurologically, physically,
Yeah.
it might just be impossible without severe health problems.
That divergence, that's huge. Which leads us straight into the deeper value discussion. What kind of society, what kind of government, what economy emerges from this new branch of humanity?
Well, looking at the early colonies, and estimates for a minimum viable population range from maybe 110 people up to several thousand. They'll likely lean heavily towards a technocracy, basically ruled by experts. It's almost unavoidable, you see, because survival depends entirely on life support, engineering, resource management working flawlessly. That specialized knowledge, it just has to take precedence over, say, pure democratic votes, at least in that initial survival phase.
Okay, a technocracy makes sense for survival, but how long until this specialized, self-sufficient colony starts thinking, hey, we don't really need Earth dictating things anymore?
History gives us some clues here, right? The pattern's pretty clear. Once any colony achieves a certain levels of technological and, crucially, economic self-sufficiency, the pressure for more autonomy, even independence, is almost inevitable. Some sources we looked at bring up the Texas Republic's independence back in the 1830s. They declared independence with only about 50,000 inhabitants. It shows you don't need millions to break away, you just need to be viable and maybe offer something unique.
So if they become viable, maybe even indispensable, what would a Martian economy do? What's their unique offering?
Early on, the thinking points towards specialization. Things like mining the asteroid belt. Mars is much better positioned for that than Earth. And specialized manufacturing, perhaps things that are easier to make or unique processes possible only in reduced gravity. The ultimate aim, though, as defined in some of the planning docs, is achieving industrial closure. That means the ability to make basically any part or component they need locally without relying on shipments from Earth. But think about trade, even internal trade. Over those distances, and with that time lag, traditional banks just won't cut it.
Yeah, that communication lag kills traditional finance. 24 minutes each way. You can't run a stock market like that.
Mm.
So what financial system do the sources predict will underpin this interplanetary economy?
The strong consensus seems to be blockchain-based cryptocurrencies. They offer the potential for trustless transactions, verifiable exchange without needing a central bank or institution mediating everything. That fits perfectly, really, with the needs of a remote, high-tech, potentially autonomous civilization spread across planets.
Fascinating. Okay, before we wrap this deep dive, we promised a hidden bonus detail, something physical about where these Martian pioneers will actually live day to day.
Ah, yes. It comes down, quite simply, to radiation. It's a huge long-term threat. The Martian surface gets something like 100 times the background radiation dose we get down here on Earth's surface. So we mentioned lava tubes earlier for growing food. Well, they're almost certainly going to be the preferred real estate for living, too. Just being inside a decent-sized Martian lava tube cuts your daily radiation exposure dramatically, from around 342 microsieverts on the surface down to maybe 61 microsieverts inside. That huge reduction is what makes long-term, multi-generational living truly viable, not just short stays.
Living underground in lava tubes. Wow, that's a powerful image to end on. Okay, let's do a quick recap of our deep dive into the 2060 Martian blueprint. First, we saw that absolute drive towards self-sufficiency ISRU, using cyanobacteria to fix the soil, radical water recycling, making Mars provide.
Second, we uncovered that potentially revolutionary terraforming plan. The engineered glitter dust for rapid warming, working hand-in-hand with that massive artificial magnetic shield out in space to protect the atmosphere they build.
And third, we confronted those profound physiological and identity challenges, especially for the first Mars-born generation. Their brains literally developing differently under 38% gravity, raising that huge question, could they ever truly come home to Earth?
And the push to establish these colonies, it really does fundamentally change the game for humanity. It diversifies our risk, ensures survival beyond one planet. It transforms us into a truly multi-planetary species. We are, right now, witnessing the potential birth of a whole new, distinct branch of humankind.
An incredible prospect. Well, that was our deep dive into Mars and the 2060 plan. And if you think figuring out governance and human biology on a new planet is complex, just wait until we look at the sheer logistics of living on this planet, especially when it's facing threats from space. Next time, we're diving deep into a massive, mostly hidden global industry. It controls your food, your data, even your travel. And we'll explore how a sudden, and frankly inevitable, major solar flare could potentially wipe out trillions, that's trillions with a T, in global assets almost instantly, within a single hour. You do not want to miss our deep dive into the coming solar apocalypse and the systems it threatens. Make sure you subscribe now.